All right, I've got a first impressions video for you for the brand new Durston Xmid Pro 1. So this is the ultralight Dyneema composite fabric one-person trekking pole tent that just came out this year. So I just received it in the mail 2 days ago. I've set it up over a dozen times. I haven't slept in it yet, so just to be perfectly clear, this is a first impressions video, and I'll show you the tent and setup and whatnot, give you some my initial thoughts, but I don't have any real feedback for you yet. I will definitely make more videos with this tent as I've used it more. Start off, I want to set it up in real time, just so you can see how simple and fast this is to set up. So I'll kind of talk as I go along. The stuff sack right here is perfectly sized. I've found that every time that I put this away, it just fits perfect. There's none of that really annoying kind of trying to cram it in there, nor is it way too big where you have a bunch of excess. So I really like the size of that. That seems like such a simple thing, but so many tents come with either huge stuff sacks that are just extra space and annoying, or they're way too. So one thing to note about this tent, and you might already know this, is that when I flip it upside down, you can hopefully see that the inner body is crooked to the outer rectangle. So you just have to be mindful if you're trying to pick a specific spot that you're going to sleep, that you want to orient the inner body on that nice flat, rootless, rockless, hopefully spot, not the outer body. So right now I'm kind of on a hill, so in this case I'm going to simulate setting it up so I was going to sleep downhill. So in that case, for example, I'd want it oriented this way. So the first step is, of course, to get as simple of a rectangular shape as you can, with each of the little built-in guy lines being as close to 45 degrees off of the corner as you can. Next step is you find your trekking pole, and then kind of what I've found to be a pretty good strategy for me. For this part, I know that I like to keep my trekking poles at 115 centimeters. When I hike, that's what I like. And also because out of the 3-section pole, the weakest is the thinnest. So what I have found is that I don't want to mess with the bottom one because I don't have to. So I keep that set at my 115 centimeters. And instead I'm just using this bigger one at the top. So what I do is I loosen that one. So right by where the zippers are, if you go underneath the tent, there's this small little piece of shot cord, and that's meant for the tip of your trekking pole to go in. If you can, in soft ground, just stab that in, because the pressure of the tent pressing it down is going to want to drive it in anyway, so you just save yourself a step of adjusting it later. Really easy to find. There's these nice big cups on the top. Simple as that. Just raise it up till it's as snug as you feel like you can go without pulling the stakes out. Lift, and then just close it. This side is symmetrical. I'm doing the same exact thing, even though you can't see. All right, so there you have it. In a simple, fast pitch without really focusing, trying to get all the corners just perfect. That's how fast and easy it can go up. All right, so let's do a quick walk around now that I've set up the tent in its simplest form with just the 4 stakes. So there's line locks in each corner. So one thing you can really tell from this angle is when you're staring at it from its rectangular base, one of the main unique features of these style tents is that the poles are offset like that. So you can see that it's not like something like a duplex or most other trekking pole tents where the poles are actually offset. And there's some wonderful benefits to that. I have to get used to it. I will admit, and this is not a problem with the tent at all, because it's so different from all the other tents that I've used, it just doesn't feel like I've done it right. Like it doesn't feel like I cleanly set it up because it's not what I'm used to. But again, that's not the tent's fault. I just have to get used to that. So right now the tent is set up with its 4 stakes in the corners and the 2 poles. It's ready to sleep in. One thing you'll find if you want to have the vestibule open or to make it easier to open one-handed is that there are these guy-out points down here at the base of each zipper. So what I plan on doing is using a much lighter weight stake. All right, so I added a very small lightweight stake down here. So what that really does is it makes it very easy to open and close the zipper with just one hand, which is really nice. All right, so let me show you some of the other features that are with the tent here. So one thing that I really like about it is it does have these big vents at the top. So they fold down nice and flat. When you want it closed, there's a little piece of Velcro there. But when you want to open it, there's actually this, probably 4-ish, maybe 5-inch long thin rod that's in here. And what that does is it gives you really good stiff support to really open that vent up. And I'll show you how big that is from a different angle in a little bit, but it opens that up significantly. And you have this nice big surface here where air might hit this with the wind and help blow up in there and really help hopefully reduce condensation. So one thing that I really like about this stake here is it does make it so you can open and close this zipper pretty easily with one hand. That's great. The other thing I like too about the geometry of the tent is that even when this is unzipped, the zipper doesn't really hit the ground much, which I've used certain tents in the past that when you unzip the vestibules or something, the zipper lies down in the dirt. And that's just going to shorten the lifespan of the zipper. You risk getting dirt and stuff in it. So I do like that. It has a magnetic toggle on the outside for holding this up. And I will say too, right off the bat, that I really like the design of this specific one. Intuitively, it's right where I want to reach. It's right there. And where I want to put it, it just goes. The length of it's basically perfect. Doesn't sound like it's a very complicated thing to get right, but I have a tarp tent dipole too, as well as a tarp tent notch LI. And both of those, I've got a bit of a qualm with the magnetic systems. Like I find that magnets are weaker. This is more significant. It definitely snaps into place. Whereas the other ones that I have, either this actual piece of material is too long, so it's sloppy and the flap kind of unrolls, or the magnet's so weak that sometimes while I'm just doing stuff in the tent, it comes undone. So that hasn't happened with this yet. It seems like it's more secure. So I do really like that. So now this opens it up. You have a huge wall of mesh here. Hopefully you can see the inside. Of course, we'll do a walkthrough in a little bit, but that's what this opens, like this. All right, let's do a walkthrough now that I've got it opened up. So one thing that comes to mind immediately is this very unique way that the pole doesn't block the door. That's basically only achievable with this sort of geometry, which is one of the things I really, really like. You can get in and out of that door without the pole being in the way at all. The other thing that I really like too is that the way that this sets up, as you end up, as long as you do that little stake right there, you end up with an enormous protected vestibule that is also outside of the way of the door, which is, in my mind, wonderful, because that makes it so you can put your pack or anything else there, and then anytime that you have to get in and out of the tent, it's just not blocking it, which is huge to me. That's one of the biggest features I like. Here you can see the peak vent opened up. It is really quite large. The inner body in all four corners has rods similar to that of the one up in that peak vent. And what they do is they lift up the corners of the bathtub floor and they make it so it holds its shape and keeps the corners up off the ground to really help protect from water, of course. And the way that it does that is each of the corners have these little shock cord, just little loops that they have there. And what they do is they have like a self-adjusting system where this cord here is just free to travel in this. So the concept is that it should sort of auto-adjust. I will admit, I do not have this pitching down to a science, and so this is like a good representation of what a fast normal pitch by somebody that doesn't have it perfected looks like. You'll notice like the way that I did this, there's not a whole lot of tension on this. It's really not pulling this very taut. Same thing, I haven't figured out a way yet to get the corners to stand up a little bit more. So you can see that there is some folding in the floor. That's not the problem with the tent, that's just me not setting it up or taking the time to really go around and make sure all the four corners are nice. Right there you can see the creasing because I stuck that pole in too close to the ground, whereas this one looks better. Another thing I really like about this tent design is so that pole goes into a small loop of shock cord. You can't really see it because it's pinned down. But what that does is it makes it so it's effortless to open this inner body as well. So truly, with one hand, that it's super duper easy to do that for real. So true one-handed zippers, open and closure. All right, I want to do a better shot of how easy this inner door is to open and close because it's another feature that I think is just really well designed and I want to show it. So the way that it works is because of this pole holding that part down, it makes it so the vertical one is basically effortless. True one-handed, open and close, really, really nice. And then same thing with this sideways one here. Really, truly one-handed operation, which is something almost every tent really claims to do, but this one does it extremely, extremely well. And it really has to do with the fact that this is anchored right by where those zippers meet. Also, you notice there's two zippers that go to a point. I actually prefer that. I have a Big Agnes copper spur. That is the first tent that I owned that was like that. And I really got used to it because those two zippers are always in the same spot. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to get out of the tent, it's really nice because they're always right there in the corner. There's none of the having to figure out, do I always keep it in the center at the top? Sometimes it's not there, do I have to reach around? Again, it sounds simple, but the fact that those zipper cords are always right where they will be when it's closed is just one of those things that's convenient. I like it. Also, the poles on them are reflective. So if you do have a headlamp on, you can find them even faster. So to show you the inner door closure, you can basically just loosely roll this up. And it has a piece of shock cord, and the idea is you just tie it in a very quick knot. That's just, you know, a really quick half hitch, just like you start tying your shoes. It is kind of nice because if you grab the shock cord at the base, you can undo that pretty easily. I will admit, there has to be a reason for it. I don't really know why it has such a nice closure, like really, in my mind, perfect. I couldn't change a thing on this one right here. And why there's still just a shock cord thing there. There's got to be a reason. Maybe it's weight savings or whatever. I'm personally going to play around with some way to add little magnets to this without permanently modifying the tent too bad. But I do want magnet there because this to me is cumbersome. If this was magnetic and I could just go click, I'd prefer that. I'll take you inside now so you can get an idea of what this looks like on the inside. So one thing of note right away, there is an enormous pocket up top there. And again, this is another feature that I just feel like is really well designed. So many of the tents have little pockets down here, and when you put weight on it, it really affects the floor. But this particular one puts it up really high, so it basically is dangling right off of the really most reinforced point of the tent where that trekking pole is. So to give you an idea of like size and stuff, that's a 4-inch folding blade knife. I'd put my phone in there, but I'm using it. So it does a really good job of really putting all the load onto the top of the trekking pole. So I think that's really clever. You get one in each side, the inside is symmetrical. Starting down at the bottom, again, like I didn't take the time to make this look perfect. The pitch I did in the beginning is what I have left here, so you could definitely spend time getting this to be cleaner on the inside in terms of a pitch. But you've got the 4 corners there. Again, it's not rectangular. It has a longer point on that corner there, which I kind of like because I keep some things up by my head while I'm sleeping, so it gives me a kind of a spot I can keep that stuff that's sort of out of the way and less likely for me to roll on top of it. The peak is huge. There is a ton of headroom in here. It's insane. Looking down the other end here, here's that inner closure. I wanted to give you an idea of what the interior space is like. It is huge for a one-person tent, which I really like. So this is the max size. They call it the max. It's a full rectangle. It's 25 inches wide by 72 inches long. So I've got it up positioned pretty high at the end. You can see that little corner I was talking about where you can keep things that you want access to at night that you don't need in the pocket. And then you still have quite a bit of room down in the bottom. So this is a much better example of how roomy the inside really is. So this is a standard 20-inch wide mat. So you'll notice that there is way more room on the sides now. All right, a little bit more additional stuff being added just to kind of help put it into perspective. This pack right here is a Superior Wilderness Designs Long Haul 50. So it's a 50-liter pack. And you can see that this vestibule just swallows it up, keeps it well out of the way of the door. I could push it even further over if I had to. So to give you an idea, that's really nice. Also, you can kind of lean it up against the pole. So if you do have some weight in the pack, you can keep it from kind of tipping over too, which is really kind of nice. Just wanted to show it with the sleeping bag in there as well. So this is a Western Mountaineering Alpenlight, which is a 20-degree bag. This is a normal length, 6 foot. So hopefully that kind of helps you have an idea of the inside space for it. One thing that's off topic, but I figured I would show it just for fun. So I just picked up a new Thermarest Neo X Therm NXT. So it's the thicker, wider, warmer, quieter mat. And one thing that I like to do is I like to use this Exped Snozzle pump bag as a pad inflator, and I also use it as a pack liner too because it weighs about just like a half an ounce more than an Alfume bag. But one thing that's kind of fun and I like, so the Snozzle doesn't fit the standard Thermarest new wing lock valve. So what I did is I found somebody that had plans for a 3D printed adapter. And so the adapter basically is semi-permanently attached to that. I could get it off if I needed to. And then the Snozzle fits into that so I can inflate it and use it as a pack liner. So just a fun thing on the side. All right, let's talk about some of the things that I'm most excited about. And again, these are just initial impressions. I don't have experience with the tent yet, which I promise you will change. So things that I particularly really like about the design. So one is the weight, of course, right? I put it on my scale with not including the hank of cord that they include. It weighed 480 grams, which comes out to just a tiny bit below 17 ounces. So a tiny bit heavier on my scale than it was in the specifications on the website, but I'm not going to fuss over that. It's still crazy light. It comes down into that stuff sack so nicely, it's tiny. So you can fit that in the smallest little frameless packs with pretty much relative ease. I really like the magnetic closure on the outer door. It works very well. It's a stronger magnet than I'm used to, so I'm super excited about that. And it's, like I said, it's really intuitive. It's right where I want to reach, and it's right there. So that is just really good attention to detail. Works for me. I like these peak vents. They're up really high. They're right by the poles. It's also kind of right over where your face is. So hopefully that really will help with the condensation, which of course all single wall tents are prone to. I love the 4-corner stake system. It's really not that bad to try to set up a rectangle on the ground and then just stick your poles in. It's one of the easiest tents I've ever set up. It's a little bit different than anything I'm used to, and I don't want to say it's finicky because I don't think that's fair to the tent, but I personally haven't developed a really good technique on getting it as well pitched every time as I would like. I also really like that the inside is quite roomy for a 1-person tent. So having 32 inches wide for 1 person gives you plenty of space for a wide width pad and also to kind of sprawl out. The headroom is insane. Like Durston says on his website, you could have 2 people sit up inside to hang out. That's absolutely true. You could easily have 2 people hang out in there if they were both sitting up. So I really like that. The trekking pole being out of the way is a huge bonus. That was one of the most attractive things to me. The pocket, which is really well placed up high out of the way and also puts the weight onto the top of the trekking pole. Again, really like that. This huge vestibule that's out of the way that has that kind of cover to it. Really excited about that as well. The zippers being truly one-handed, as well as the interior zippers being the 2 zippers that meet in that corner. Again, another huge bonus in my mind. I really like that design. I used to really like the double rainbow style of my duplex, but after getting used to the Big Agnes copper spur and the same style here where they meet in the corner, I just like it better. They're always in the right spot, and you don't have the zipper going down into the dirt, getting dirty, or getting your mesh resting on the ground where it can potentially get stepped on or holes in it, like a rainbow tent style like the duplex. The quality of construction is really, really good. Everything just looks really heavy duty, reinforced. No blemishes whatsoever that I've found so far. I keep thinking of more design features and things about the tent that I really like, so I'm gonna have to do more editing on this video than I would prefer. Another thing I really like about this tent, there's 2 more things that I thought of while I was taking it down. The first is the lack of tripwires. So when you set this tent up with its basic 4-stake pitch, all you're dealing with is, what's that, 8 inches maybe of line in the corners under ideal circumstances. So what that means is when you're moving around at night, like if you get up because nature calls in the middle of the night, you just have that many less things to trip over. You don't have a line blocking the door like you have on almost every other trekking pole tent out there with the apex lines. So it's just really nice. And then the thing that I thought of too, and I thought of that, was that it really helps keep the weight realistic. So when you have a tent like this that when I go out, I plan on bringing 6 stakes, 4 heavy-duty ones for the corner, like MSR groundhogs or 9-inch nails, those spikes, not the band. Those are great for the corner because there's a lot of force in those, and then just lightweight ones for the doors. If you expect bad conditions, you can, of course, bring more. But what I really like about this tent is that the weight of the tent is more accurate. Because there are other tents out of there, a lot of 1-door single trekking pole tents come to mind that advertise their weight, but the thing that you don't think of, or at least I don't think of, is all of the stakes you need to set that up. Like there are certain models, for example, some of the Z-Packs ones, that to set it up, you need 10 stakes. So even if you use the lightest stakes you can find, that's a significant number of stakes, and they are metal usually, they are carbon sometimes, but they add up in weight is my point. And the other thing is all of those stakes for every tent needs some kind of guy line. So when you're dealing with apex guy lines or lots of long adjustable tripwire guy lines like you might find on a duplex or similar style tents, that's extra weight too. You're dealing with many, many feet of cord. And yeah, cord's not the heaviest thing in the world, but it all adds up, right? And that's why we buy tents like this in the first place, is because we want to really cut our weight down. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about. And again, to be completely fair and transparent, this is a first impressions video, but there are a couple things that I see right off the bat that I'm a little bit leery of. The first thing that comes to mind is that in each 4 corners of the inner body and also the 2 holdout points here, you have these, they're very, very skinny, but very stiff rods. Hopefully you can see that. It's probably like maybe 1.5, 2 millimeters thick, very, very skinny. And I think I read somewhere that they're carbon, which is great, right? Super duper light. I have found that when I'm folding the tent up and I'm putting it away, sometimes as I'm rolling it, I can feel that those poles are not in line correctly, if that makes sense. So like I can feel them like they would get rolled in the long way, so that it could put pressure on them and potentially snap them, or worst case scenario, even stab through or something. To be fair, there are little caps I can feel. There's rubber caps on the end of it, so it's not just like a sharp pole that could easily stab through the tent, but I imagine it's possible to break those if you really tried to cram the tent down hard, or especially if you're one of those people that just uses the tiniest backpack you can and you kind of basically like stomp everything into the bottom to fit everything. I could see that being a potential issue. Another thing, and this is part of the deal, right, is when you go with the lightest weight shelters that you can find, you go to thinner materials, and this floor is very thin. I knew that. That's part of the deal. I get it. But even knowing that, when you actually get in there and you look at it, it's mega thin. Like you could read a newspaper through that. So again, not a problem with the tent per se. I wanted the lightest possible fully featured one-person shelter I could get, and that's just part of the game. So we'll have to see how that floor holds up over time. It's incredibly thin. One other thing about the tent, and this honestly is not fair to the tent, is that because of its geometry being so unique and me not having a lot of experience with it, trying to get it like set up really like clean and pretty with the floor not being crinkled and with the four corners being like a little bit more ideal, I'm not finding that to be super easy. I can set this thing up in under 3 minutes to be perfectly capable of sleeping in, so that's amazing. But there's just something about the geometry that I think I'm gonna have to get used to it, because I'm so used to that traditional symmetrical, this is symmetrical, but what I'm trying to say is like rectangular shape where everything is just sort of like parallel, and it just feels clean for like the OCD part of my brain. So I'm gonna have to get used to this. A lot of the things I really like about this tent are from that unique geometry, but when I set it up and I'm just not getting it quite right yet, there's just a little part of me that feels off, if that makes sense. That probably sounds like a little whiny complaint, and it is. It's not the tent's fault at all. I just have to get used to it. It's just something that I think of when I look at the tent after I set it up. I feel like I could and should be getting the pitch a little bit cleaner and neater, but of course that will hopefully improve with time. One other thing that I'm a little bit nervous about, and this is completely user-based, is that when you set this tent up, setting it up too tight before I put the poles in, and it kind of limits the pitch. So when I've set it up and I've really like used all the line locks to tighten it out before I put the poles in, it puts a ton of pressure on the tent. And what I've found is when I do that, it puts a lot of sideways pressure on the zipper. Not so much when the zipper is closed, it's fine, but once you've opened the zipper, it puts slack into the tent. And then when I try to close it, I really feel like I'm forcing it, and that with a zipper is just never a good idea. So what I think works a lot better is if you just make sure that it's not too taut on that axis. But that's just something to kind of be keeping in mind, is that if you were putting too much pressure sideways on that zipper and trying to close it and really forcing it, anytime you try to force the zipper is a bad idea. All right, I'll break it down now. I admit I'm still new to figuring out the best way to roll this tent up, so that's a work in progress. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments, or if you've seen a video that does a really good job with this, I'd love to see it too, because I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. But I want to take it down just so you can see sort of what that looks like. One tip that I found is, like I said, I like to have my trekking poles at 115 centimeters, and I'm not used to the loosening my poles and raising them. So what I found is that in most times when I set this up, if it's not on a hill, I can actually adjust the top section straight to my 115 and still be able to take it out of the tent. So it's like saves me that 1-2 seconds of time, right, where I can take it out, put it right where I want it for the day and not have to fiddle with it later. It's just being efficient. So I do like that. If you hold the peak right here, it makes it really easy to zip this closed. So far, the way that I've found that I find it's the neatest, and this might change, is if I find the peak and kind of get this to lie flat, I do the same thing on this side. So just a quick fold in half like that. And what that does is it keeps it so you don't really see much of the mesh, as I say that. You can see a little corner there. So there you go. That's where I'm currently at with putting it away. I'm sure I'll come up with a better system than that, but it does a pretty good job of making it very fast and easy and keeping the rain fly part up, so you're not getting rain inside of the tent through the mesh if it is raining when you're taking it down. All right, what I want to do really fast, and I'll fast forward it so you don't have to watch everything again. I want to take the time to try to set this up a little bit more properly so I can show off a better pitch than just that quick version that I did before. So. Okay, so I took my time this time, readjusted the corners as I needed to, and I have definitely a better pitch. All it took was maybe an extra minute of paying attention to it. So one thing that you'll find right off the bat is now that not only does it look more taut, it's significantly more taut. And this is with just the same 4 stakes. I did put the 2 in that hold the vestibule corners in too, but they don't really help much with the structure. They're more of a door convenience. But this is a significantly more taut. And of course, you do have all these extra attachment points that you could guy this out to make this even more secure. There's one in the middle on each side. You have one in each apex here. And on the really big broad side, you do have one here and down here, because you need extra points for that, because that's the side that's most susceptible to wind. So if you're forced to set up with this into the wind, they did think of that and they gave you some attachment points there. And a quick peek on the inside of what the floor looks like. The corners are held up better. All right, so I want to go over weight really quick. So to be completely fair, there's a little bit of grass and other things that are stuck to the tent just from setting it up and taking it down. However, everything that is in here right now is the tent with its attached line locks and guy lines and the stuff sack. That's it. So right now it comes out on my scale to 484 grams. To be totally honest, I weighed it before it was ever set up outside and it came in at 480 exactly. So I have 4 grams of junk in there right now. It does also ship with this hank of reflective line here, which comes in on my scale at 14 grams. Let's move it to ounces just for simplicity's sake. That total cordage is a ½ ounce, and the tent and stuff sack on my scale with included leaves comes out to on the dot 17 ounces. I have weighed just the stuff sack by itself and it's 10 grams. Let's do a really quick measurement on the stuff sack when it's packed up. I did not go nuts trying to get this small and tiny. I find it very easy to get back into this stuff sack, but just so you have a rough idea, very loosely put away, you could definitely make it smaller. It's fair to say that it's 1 foot wide by roughly 6 inches in diameter. All right, so final thoughts on an already very long video, and if you've lasted this long, thanks, I appreciate it. Although you might want as many details on this tent as possible. I know that I did and didn't find much, which is why I'm making this. Who's this tent for? So this particular tent is for a solo backpacker, obviously it's a one-person tent, that wants to use a trekking pole tent to have as light of a weight as shelter as possible, but not skimping on comfort and features. When you put it that way, it kind of sounds like a dream tent, right? And it really has the potential to be for what it is. Without spending a billion more minutes talking about all the features that I've already pointed out, the fact that it has such an easy pitch, it has a ton of headroom, a ton of space inside, a wider than average width, while being close to 1 pound is amazing. It's absolutely stunning. I'm super excited for this tent for all of those reasons, and I can't wait to try it out. I have an upcoming Continental Divide through hike planned attempt in May of this year, and this is the shelter that I'm planning on bringing with me. I own a lot of tents. Tents are my favorite toy. So I have a whole bunch of them. I have a Dipole 2 by Tarp Tent. I also have a Tarp Tent Notch Li. I was considering both of those, and once this tent came out and I realized I could get my hands on it, I ordered it within 10 minutes of it being launched. I'm pretty confident that this is the tent that I'm going to like to use the most. My only concerns for this potential tent, like I've already said, are the carbon little rods. I'm a little bit concerned that if I stuff this too tight or don't pay attention to those, there's a chance that they could break, potentially even stabbing through the tent. Completely unfounded, it's just a thought that popped in my mind. And then also the long-term durability, mainly of the floor. I've used a lot of Dyneema shelters before, and that Dyneema material that goes up into the air shouldn't ever really get abraded. It lasts a very long time, but a very thin nylon floor, I'll have to see how that holds up over time. But if you're that concerned about it, get the ground cloth, right? Like you could totally do that, and that's what it's for, is protecting that. So time will tell how that holds up, and I will be certain to make more videos of using this tent as well as longer term reviews. So definitely stay tuned for those if it's something you're interested in. I actually do have my own website. It's mostly a gear consulting website where if you have any questions on this particular tent or any other equipment in general, feel free to check out my website. It's www.linksoutdoorsgear.com. I'll put a link in the description for it. It's basically, I'm a one-person show here. I like to review gear. I do a lot of backpacking and other types of adventures. So I do have a bunch of information and other reviews of products on there, and you can contact me there directly if there's something that you're really interested in. Thanks so much for sticking out the whole video. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this answers a bunch of questions you have about the tent. If you have any other questions about it, or if there's anything that you think I forgot, by all means, please leave it in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thanks so much for watching.